Well, welcome everybody. We had hoped we wouldn't have to do this by Zoom, but here we are, and we're getting used to this. So hopefully in the spring we'll be able to all meet in person again. So thank you everyone who's tuned in here by Zoom. We're experts at this now. So I want to thank our outgoing board members. And if you give me that list again, we have Jerry Ettinger. I don't know if Jerry's here yet. Alina Decker, Rich Pasalacqua, John Eisenberg, and Anita Kraken. So all of them have been very helpful. We appreciate all their positive contributions to the museum. And now we're looking forward to the new members who have come on. Lockie is going to be here. I'm going to be the president going forward. Eric Ziedrich is our past president. I thank him for all the help he's given me in helping me get situated. To PJ Lentz, our treasurer, and you might wave as I mention your name if you're there. Bob Pennypacker. Bob's done such wonderful visuals for us, but he's also our assistant treasurer. And Kay Robinson, our secretary, who answers all my questions. If I need a list of something, Kay has it. Then we have our current list. Some are returning board members. Lockie, I'm going to go down this list. Pretty much Lockie's been here before, but he's still here. We have Kim Lloyd, who is joining us. Bo Simmons, Bo's there. Jane Rosenberg, Joanne Toffer, Patrick Mukeda. Rita Munsell wasn't able to join us tonight, but I look forward to working with Rita. Harry Jackson, who I know from Kiwanis. And Fran, you have to help me with your last name.
Schierenbeck.
Schierenbeck. Yeah. I will get it by the end of the year for sure, Schierenbeck. So thank you all for saying yes. And together we have a lot to do this year. There's a lot ahead of us, but I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much for participating and helping to make this museum great. Thank you.
So thank you.
Yep.
And just here are some visuals of the new board members. Welcome, Jane, Joanne, Patrick, Fran, Harry, and Rita.
Yes, thank you.
So, thank you, Susan. If you want to mute your voice, you can now.
I will.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about looking back over 2021 and some upcoming plans for 2022. Well, so looking back, it's really weird to look at the calendar and realize that the museum was closed to the public until the middle of May. So during that time when we were closed, we hunkered down and were focusing on digitizing and trying to enhance the museum's website and other digital content. So that included all working on getting all of the back issues of the Russian River Recorder digitized and indexed, and they are now available, downloadable, and readable on our website. That was a really good project, and with volunteers and help from Lauren. Then most recently, the 1983 Healdsburg Cultural Resource Survey of Historic Buildings, Structures, and Sites has been digitized, indexed, and is also on the website. That was made possible with a generous grant from Eric and Mary Drew and Sotheby's Real Estate. We started digitizing the Healdsburg Museum's Historic Preservation Awards. You will see tonight, this is our first video version of giving out the Historic Preservation Awards. We also really tried to step up our social media content. So we've been posting about local history and things going on at the museum every day or at least 5 days a week on our social media. And in the past year, our Facebook has grown basically 183 people in the past year, and Instagram close to the same amount in the same time. So it's really nice way to keep in touch with people through computers who can't come to the museum. And that was a way that we were able to stay in touch and sort of build community while the museum was closed. So when we did reopen, we opened May 15th, and we still had the history of photography exhibit that we'd started the previous year that had only been open for a month and a half. So that was called Picturing Healdsburg, and that was highlighting local photographers and local photography, and really showed off the museum's extensive camera collections. That was done with big help co-curating from Stan Becker, and that was kept on display until August. And we were so happy in May to get to welcome people back to come and research. Our research center is one of the most vibrant parts of the museum, and we really look forward to getting to have people come in and research like usual. And Lauren was really glad to see people back in the museum. We were able to do the Family History Essay Awards at a distance. As you can see, we were able to present the awards at a ceremony outside, masked, distant, but still with a lot of heart and a lot of love for the students. Their families were able to come, but not the full, grandparents and all the siblings that we'd had in the past. So we had to have a smaller version of it, but it was still a lot of fun, and it was a great experience. Phyllis has done an amazing job keeping that Family History Essay Contest going. And we have a generous couple, Fred and Leota Gonzalez, who have been sponsoring the Family History Essay Awards. And they've just given us another generous $5,000 award this year to try to make the Family History Awards great for the next few years. So we really appreciate them. We got in a couple of days of spring cleanup at the Oak Mound Cemetery. Big thanks to Susan Sheehy, our new board president, who was able to get both vineyard workers from the Robert Young family winery, where Susan is part of it, and also able to get other vineyard management companies to help loan workers to come and help with the problem of overgrown weeds, down trees at the cemetery. It takes a lot of work to keep it up, and the museum has been doing the best we can to try to help the cemetery owners keep up that cemetery, which is a privately owned cemetery, but a lot of the people buried there don't have local families to take care of the graves. So we try to do what we can through the museum. I was happy to celebrate my 25th anniversary working for the Healdsburg Museum. It was a really nice celebration. I received a proclamation in honor of my 25 years of service to the museum, and it was a really special event. We also, I was given a beautiful gift that was a necklace you can see in the middle that was made by Clint McKay, who was one of the native consultants working on the exhibit with us, and I will cherish it forever. So it was a strange year, following an even stranger year before. So looking at how did the museum cope in 2021, well, we cut the operations budget. And partly that was because we weren't doing the regular things that we would plan to be doing. We canceled our traditional fundraising events, including History Lives. We didn't have the instant wine cellar raffle, but we did apply for and receive a California relief grant through the Small Business Association. We received $15,000. We were able to bump up our memberships and business partnerships. Our annual appeal, let's see, has raised so far $61,000, and that was exciting. We were trying to raise 55, so that's been great. A big thing has been our commemorative brick walkway, which has turned out to be a huge fundraiser. I'll talk more about that in a second. We received a lot of generous grant support for this exhibit. And then we were fortunate to have donations as well, both memorials and in honor of. So the commemorative brick walkway has been a huge fundraiser. Kay Robinson and Jerry Edinger are the ones who started it. It was really Kay's idea, but it's turned out to be a huge, wonderful thing for the museum. And people are still adding to the brick walkway. We have one last chance. Phase 3 of the brick walkway is now underway. And if you want to get a brick, this is your last chance. That's the shameless plug, but that's the only one I'm going to do. Thanks. So the other thing that really was a highlight of last year as well as this year is we have embarked on our first collaboration with the Dry Creek Pomo tribe on an exhibit and a publication. So guest curator Sherry Smith Ferry is retired director from the Grace Hudson Museum, and we've had a long, great relationship with Sherry and the Grace Hudson Museum. And when Sherry retired, she talked to me about her plans to do a Pomo exhibit at the cultural center that the tribe was planning to build. And we talked about the possibility of starting that exhibit here at the Healdsburg Museum and building it and then having it then go to the cultural center. And realizing that we'd never done an exhibit of this type with a guest curator, it really was an amazing, great experience. And it's still an amazing, great experience. So what we started with was grants. We applied for 3 grants, and the museum was very fortunate. We were awarded $28,000 in grant support from the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation, the Community Foundation Sonoma County, and the Healdsburg Tourism Improvement District. Sherry and the Dry Creek Tribe started with the Institution of Museum and Library Services to get a grant for their cultural center project. And so we've actually been enriched by that grant, but we technically did not apply for the IMLS grant. It's helping to fund the publication that we're going to do to accompany this exhibit. We're looking to do like an expanded catalog that's going to be part of the exhibit, but will also show more of the history and some of the things that we just haven't been able to get into the exhibit. So with that grant money, we've been able to do some major upgrading to the museum. The first of which was this showcase new state-of-the-art display case that we were able to get thanks to the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation. This art display case was shipped from Germany, was handmade, well, made in Germany, special glass, special shelves, and came by, well, came by truck, then by team of people bringing it into the museum. And it was it was a close call even getting it into the building. So we were very excited when it actually arrived and is now the focal point of this new exhibit. It looks fantastic. And we are thrilled that we get to keep it. So not only is that special case full of amazing baskets, we also, we have 79 baskets on display. And this was an amazing thing to try to pulled together, because in order to bring in these baskets, most of them are on loan. The museum has a wonderful collection of baskets, but the goal of this exhibit was to try to bring together many, many baskets that have never been shown together before, that help demonstrate a certain style, a regional style of basket making, of basket materials and embellishments that is characteristic of inland northern Sonoma County, specifically Pomo and Wapo people who are from this area. So in order to bring these baskets here to the museum, it required getting individual insurance coverage, thanks to Brandt Insurance. They were amazing. Linda at Brandt Insurance, couldn't speak more highly of her. She did an amazing job. Each one required a loan form, a condition report, and agreements how it was going to be shipped. And after that, we were working on getting the museum interior transformed to go from the last exhibit to a completely new exhibit with all new colors, new cases, new wall cases. And we had some photographs and artwork blown up to make murals and decorate the walls of the museum. Never have we done so much to transform the museum in such a short time. It's been really amazing. And we also, Sherry had her own team of people. She has worked at the Grace Hudson Museum for years, and she's worked with the Dry Creek Rancheria tribe. So she really had a comfort level of wanting to bring in mostly her own people to do the work. So at the very beginning, we were fortunate that Jim and Meredith were able to help out. But for the most part, she had people that she brought, and they did an amazing job. And now we have some great new friends from Mendocino County. The handling of the basketry could not have been more meticulous and careful. A number of the baskets that we borrowed came from the Phoebe Hearst Museum of Anthropology in Berkeley. And in order to even borrow from that institution, first they had us prepare a facilities report, analyzing the Healdsburg Museum top to bottom, and a report on everything about the museum itself. And then two of the staff members came to visit the museum to look at the lighting, to check out the security, to see how our climate control is handled. They had never loaned to our museum before. And so in order to be comfortable and responsible in loaning these precious baskets, they needed to make sure that we were up for it and that we were an appropriate repository for their baskets. And I'm so happy that we did pass inspection. But it was a little nerve-wracking to know that they were coming to check us out before we could go forward with the loan. And so the other thing is that we, all the baskets in the Hearst collection, they're not all collected with the exact name of the tribe. So some of them are, for instance, are collected and they say Pomo or Sonoma County. And so in order for the Hearst to, their own policies require that for them to be able to loan these baskets that have ambiguous cultural attribution, they needed to get permission from all of the Pomo tribes in northern inland Sonoma County to be able to loan to us. And so those tribes had to sign off in order for that to happen. And we were able to get that to take place in time for the baskets to come and be on display. But it was really a huge process to make that happen. And so glad that it worked out so well. In these pictures that you're looking at, the person with the ponytail and the purple gloves, she's the expert who came to the museum and really wanted to assess to make sure that none of the baskets that they were loaning are going to be in too much light or unstable conditions that might do something to damage the feathers or any other part of the baskets. So they take it really seriously, and so do we. One thing that came about through this is that we did not have a good security system and a surveillance system. And that was going to be one of the major obstacles to being able to borrow. And thanks to our board member, Lockie Gillies, we now have new security cameras and a surveillance system that was donated and installed by Lockie, and it's working great. And it's really made a big difference. So thank you, Lockie. Another thing, just talking about the process of getting objects ready for display. What you're looking at is turkey feathers, and it's like a cape or a skirt that male dancers would wear for traditional dancing. We have a dance apron in the museum collection that was made by Clarence Carrillo for display. It was made in the traditional manner, but it's never been used as a sacred dance object. So, but we wanted to display it as part of this exhibit. And in the time that it had been in our collection, it had been damaged by bugs. And so some of the, basically some of the feathers had to be removed. Some of the pest damage had to be mediated. And we were able to repair it, fluff it up, steam it, and now it's on display. And we learned some new things about that as well. So it looks great. The grant funding paid for some educational programming to support this exhibit. And so far, we've hosted an in-gallery basket making demonstration, an online presentation about the importance of oaks and acorns. And we have a second basket weaving demonstration planned with Clint and Lucy McKay on February 12th. Unfortunately, the current county COVID health constraints are preventing us from being able to have the pomo basketry panel that we were planning for this Sunday at the Merritt Hall at Harmon Guest House. Unfortunately, we have to postpone that. We just can't gather indoors with a group of that size. So we're trying to come up with a new date that will work for the panelists, and we're so sorry that we have to reschedule it. But we still have plenty of months. The exhibit is up through May 29th. So we have months to do this, and we will. We definitely will. We really want to have a in-person, robust discussion. If we have to do it by Zoom, that will be like kind of the last choice. But if we have to do it that way, we will. But we'd really prefer to have it in person. And we're going to work with Cersei Share to find a better, either a different place or another day that we can have it. But that would have been this Sunday, and we're so sorry. But we do have still great things to come. As part of the educational programming and entertaining programming that are coming with this exhibit, we have a Native Food Festival scheduled on March 26th, Indian Art Fair, April 23rd, and a book reading for the publication, the catalog about the exhibit. We plan to have that on May 29th. So we still have more entertaining and educational activities. We just hope that COVID will cooperate and we can have them as we plan to. So we are planning to have this year's Langhart Volunteer Picnic and Volunteer Appreciation Award. Last year we had a COVID scare, so we had to cancel that event. So unfortunately, we did not have a volunteer appreciation picnic last year. And we sure appreciate our volunteers a lot, and we are dying to get together and do that again. So this year we are planning, and we even have a date on the calendar, May 14th at Hoot Owl Creek Picnic Grounds. BJ and Russ Green families, gorgeous grounds in Alexander Valley. It has a barbecue, and it's a great site for picnics if you haven't been there. And the museum hasn't had a picnic at Hoot Owl Creek in, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 years. So we're really looking forward to going there. And Phyllis and Lockie have been volunteers, extraordinary volunteers for the museum for so many years. It'll be a treat to get together and thank them in person and present them with the awards that we weren't able to give them last year. So hope you can join us for that in May. We're also planning, optimistically planning, to have History Lives, our big fundraiser, and also our big friend raiser that we love, honoring people who have done a lot to bring history to the community, and also to do a lot in their field. Because we haven't notified the History Lives honoree yet, I can't tell you who that's going to be. They need to find out before you do. But we do know, thanks to Susan Young Sheehy, we have a place for it. We're excited and that we're going to plan to have this year's History Lives dinner and event at the Robert Young Estate Winery in Alexander Valley. So we have a date. And this is the view of the gorgeous grounds at the Robert Young Estate property. These are new board members and existing board members. We went out to check out the property and loved it. So this is actually outside the tasting room, and there's a whole beautiful grassy view that looks out over Alexander Valley where we'll have the tables, and it's going to be great. Really excited about that. Another thing that we're excited about is that we have a great deal of intern support this year. Some of them started last year, but we have 5 high school students and 1 graduate student who are working to learn more about museum, the work of museums, and also trying to find experience for college. So I've been really thrilled. Since I work on the weekends, one of my favorite things is that I get to work with high school students. So we're really thrilled that high school students have been increasingly coming forward and saying that they want museum experience. So only one of these, Stephanie, up in the top right-hand corner, Stephanie was a high school student that came to us through the internship, the mentor program through Healdsburg High School. The rest are students who've just come forward and expressed interest in working with the museum and having the opportunities to learn about what we do here. So it's really great, and it's one of my favorite things. So I'm very excited to have this great crop of student interns to work with. Lauren and Jane and I all feel this way. So planning for the rest of the year, the promo exhibit will go through May 29th, and I'm inspired to celebrate the museum's Historic Preservation Awards. In working with Bob Pennypacker and Fran Schurenbeck on this year's Architectural Awards, I realized that our museum has been presenting Historic Preservation Awards for 30 years. And we've given out awards for nearly 75 buildings in Healdsburg. And mostly what's been really great about that is that people have preserved the architectural heritage of Healdsburg. And so what we've done, rather than, tell people they can't tear down buildings or that sort of thing, what we've really done is try to encourage people who are doing the necessary work to preserve Healdsburg, preserve the best architecture of Healdsburg. And we're thrilled that we're going to be both doing that inside the museum, and we're working on a new app called Clio, which is like a map-based application. So people who have phones and are out in the community can actually go to one of the buildings and look and see some history, see some photographs, and get a little bit about the architecture of Healdsburg without necessarily being in the museum. So we're trying to take the architectural history outside of the museum walls and out into the community where people can learn more. So we're looking forward to that. Also planning to do the first toy exhibit in a few years. And I'm inspired to try to focus on all wooden toys, blocks and hobby horses and doll houses and all the fun things that are made from wood. And that is going to be the focus of the toy exhibit later this year. So if you've got wooden toys, you got to come and talk to me. Please send me your toys. We've also had a really exciting opportunity. Circe and Pamela Scheer have approached us with a possible legacy gift to benefit the museum and honor the memory of Merritt Scheer, who's passed away in 2018. What we're trying to do is planning a new long-term exhibit that will focus on the cultural geography of Healdsburg. Merritt Scheer was a philosopher of place, and in some ways this is inspired by that. So it's called Many Paths to Healdsburg. And what I'm looking to do is try to present in a dynamic way so that it's not a permanent exhibit that just is stale, that it's a dynamic exhibit that continues to grow, and that we can continue to add new stories and take out stories, replace stories. And this will be how and why people have come to Healdsburg, from someone's like Harmon Heald, who came for gold, struck out at gold, and came down here for farming and making a store. People like who came through the guest worker program as braceros, people who came as Italian immigrants and worked at Italian Swiss colony. Like, there's so many stories and so many interesting ways and reasons that people came to Healdsburg. And so this is going to be the focus of a long-term exhibit that's going to stay in the gallery for probably 5 to 7 years, that we'll keep adding to it and changing the flavor and hoping to make it a really exciting and vibrant exhibit. So one of the ways that we hope to have that happen is that Kulipat Yantrasast is an internationally recognized architect and museum designer who has offered to help us. And we're hoping to do this in the first part of this year, to have him visit as a consultant to help lead us in a visioning session where we'll talk about enhancing the museum, both in a design way, but also to expand our footprint in the community. So we may not be able to, grow our museum building that much bigger, but we're looking at ways to have an even bigger splash in the community that we love. And some of that might be online, some of that might be exhibits in other places, but we're going to be trying to listen to the community more and look at how this museum can be the best museum that we can be, and also how can we be the most relevant and helpful to our community. So I'm really excited about that, and you will be hearing a lot more about it. So in closing my part of this presentation, I'd like everyone, if you would, to raise a glass in honor of several beloved Healdsburg Museum volunteers and members who passed away in 2021. Catherine Curtis, Keith Power, Mel Amato, John Carragher, Ray Luand, and Steve Kotler. May their memories be a blessing, and may their spirits continue to inspire us. Cheers. So the next part of this meeting, I'm going to ask Fran Scherenbeck, the chair of our Historic Preservation Committee, to unmute, and hopefully that will work.
I unmuted and I uncameraed myself too, because I get so distracted by looking at myself that I thought I won't do that.
Okay, well then I will go to the first award.
So are we showing the videos first, or am I talking first? Sorry, we didn't quite work that.
Okay, so you're talking first, and
Okay.
then the video.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the museum for allowing me to be part of these awards. To me, I just love doing it. And it's really an honor to be able to be involved with these great buildings and to honor the people that have worked so hard to do it, to put money and the time and the effort in it, because we know it's not always the most practical thing to do. And I'm going to get on my soapbox just a little bit again, because I have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But preservation is so important. And why is it important? Well, a few years ago, interestingly enough, I was in a meeting with a city that was just turning 50 years old. And they were so excited that they had buildings that were now going to be 50 years old, because that means they had buildings that would be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places or potentially eligible for the California Register. And I thought about this, and I thought about what we have in Healdsburg, and I thought, wow, how lucky are we to have all these incredible buildings in Healdsburg. And it's so important to remember these buildings because they create a sense of place and they ground us to our communities. And a great way to illustrate what this meaning is to look back at what we lost in the fires. Now, I can't imagine what it was like to lose your home or your business. That just must be incredibly devastating. But collectively, we can understand what it's like to lose anchor structures in our community, like when the round barn burnt. I cried like a baby, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person is, because you think about what that building meant to Sonoma County. It was the anchor of that area, and everybody knew where it was, and had been there for over 100 years. And these type of buildings give us our sense of place. And that's why, again, I know I'm on my soapbox, but it's so important for us to remember these structures. I mean, look at what happened when Notre Dame caught fire. I bawled again too, and I know a lot of people did. So to honor the people in our community that are working to save these buildings is just, I think it's a great program, and I feel very honored to be involved to it. And I know I've said this many times before, but you can buy wine anywhere, but people come to Healdsburg for the experience of the wine and the experience of Healdsburg, and preserving it is really important. So I'll get off my soapbox and move on to the next, the next part of it. So the Francis Schwab House, this is such a great building. I just love this building. It was built in 1895 by G.W. Harmon, this was the location of his nursery. It was the Harmon Nursery, and this building is built in the stick style. And at the time, the newspaper said it was the handsomest in the township. And seriously, look at it. Of course, they would say that. So, what is stick style? What does that mean? Well, before this, we have the Greek Revival, which has less decoration. It's very refined. And then we have the Carpenter Gothic at the same time, which has decorations, but it's probably not as over the top. So these are, where stick style kind of bridges us from those architectural styles into the Queen Anne style. So the term stick comes from the outside expression of the building. And it's a little bit hard to see in these pictures, but the outside expression of the building, the half timbering of the building, was something you found in Tudor buildings. But clearly this is just for pure decoration. So what's going on at this time? Well, how did this develop? Well, the stick style became popular from about 1860 to 1895, and the Industrial Revolution was just beginning to start at the beginning of that. And plan books and millwork was getting easier to get. And the 2x4 was becoming standardized. Think that you couldn't get standardized lumber really before that era. And balloon framing was being perfected, and that technology allowed people to build quicker and, you know, more varied types. And like all buildings, or all things, I should say, when something becomes new, it's always the wealthier people that get to do it first, because, you know, I have the money to go out and get it, and the plan books aren't quite as available as they will be, and the timber and the different decorative elements aren't quite available yet, but I've got a lot of money, so I'm going to go out and get them. So the style really first starts as the wealthy people, and it was a way of expressing, I've got money, look at me, which we still do that today, obviously. But the characteristics of this style are the vertical emphasis of it. If you look at the windows, you see they're elongated. The projecting windows, the patterns of the panels and the grid, it has almost a square look to it. It's not as free form as the Queen Anne movement, which will kind of come after this. But it's the bridge between those two. And asymmetrical roofs and roof lines are very popular. Now, when I look at this building, I get a little crazy, because to me, it's like a wedding cake with all the bells and whistles. It has 4 dormers, people, 4 dormers. There's no reason for it to have 4 dormers other than sheer decoration. And it's just, to me, it's just so, I just love this building, obviously. And even the windows, if you have a chance, Google this building and just really look at it, because it has, you can see the stick elements around the buildings. That's the outside expression of the building. But around the windows, there's these little pyramidal blocks, purely decoration, all of this stuff. There's panels above the windows, below the windows. There's decorative brackets in the corners and sunbursts in the just lost what I was talking about there. And then the dormers and the upper dormers, they're just purely decorative. And you look at the brackets on this building, and they have drop pediments. They're not as free flooring and flowy as you'll find in the Queen Anne, or as linear as the Italianate. And that's because this is part of the expression of that, the Tudor, Tudor, whatever, movement in there. So even the barge board, or the gingerbread that sometimes call it, is over the top with these incised lines and these little rondelles. I mean, there isn't a space on the front of this house that is not decorated. And the windows, this is probably my favorite thing about this house. These are, they're not bay windows. Bay windows and oriel windows are often confused. Bay windows go all the way to the ground. These don't. If you look at the bottom underneath them, you see these conical shapes, clearly decorative, most likely just covering up the brackets underneath. But they are, I don't know that I've ever seen them on another house like this. And I just love those. So I can go on and on, obviously, about this building, because I just love it. I used to work around the corner from this building, and every week or so, I would take the long way home just so I could drive around it, just so I could see it and look at it, because to me, it's just that special. So anyways, when Harmon built this building, he was showing people, I'm a prosperous nursery guy. Look what I can build. I'm building something in this really cool style, and I can afford to put all this stuff on. So you better come buy your nursery goods from me, because obviously I have quality goods here. And we still do that with architecture, trying to express how we, our wealth and our position in the communities. But Harmon sold the nursery in 1903 to B.C. Kinley, which I'm guessing that's where Kinley Drive came from. But it was purchased by Frank Schwab, and that's when it went into the Schwab family. And at this time, this is 1934, this style has fallen out of favor. This is when you start to see Victorian homes get stripped down. They're not cool anymore. They're hard to take care of. Look at all that stuff you got to paint and all those stuff you have to worry about rotting off. And unfortunately, this is the very beginning of us starting to lose this home, but the Schwabs didn't do that. The detail that is left in this house is just so incredible. And the amount of time and money they have put into this house, they totally deserve this award. It's just, like I said, this is one of my favorite buildings in town. So thank you for saving the homes. Thank you for saving all this frosting on it, as I like to say. And thank you for the many hours of pleasurable drive-by gawking that I've done on this house. So congratulations to Anne and family.
Okay. I'm going to try to now show the film where Anne is going to talk a little bit about the house. Okay. About to present the Healdsburg Museum's annual Historic Preservation Awards in the categories of residential, commercial, and adaptive reuse. Come on with me now.
Last year we weren't able to present these awards, but this year we figured out a way to do it. Okay.
Our first destination is 1385 Magnolia Drive, the Frank Schwab House.
During the pandemic, I realized I wouldn't be anyplace else but here. And I used this leftover wood from an old barn we had and built these planter boxes to, just really enjoy the fullness of this place. And, over the years, my husband and I just 3 years ago replaced these steps that were falling down. And right now I'm in the middle of just kind of spiffing up my kitchen and making sure that I have good insulation, good windows to look out and see the geysers in the morning. And we've really, if you turn around and you can check out all the camellia plants that we've fostered to continue having something blooming all year round.
Well, I'd like to present you with this award from the Healdsburg Museum.
All right, thank you so much.
And it's for the family's use of this property since the 1930s, I believe.
Yes, 1935. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's my cue.
Yep.
So this is the Anderson Medical and Dental Building, and this award is for commercial historic preservation. And it's a streamlined, modern building built in 1939. And I know I say this a lot, but this is a building that I always stop and go, huh, look at that little building there, because it's so different. You don't see these a lot in our area. I remember one time I had to make an appointment with a dermatologist, and I could choose different ones that were within my plan. And I found one that was in this building, and I purposely went there. So architecture geek I am. But this building was built in 1939. It's in the streamlined modern style, which is sometimes called the Art Moderne style. And modern comes from the Art Deco movement. The Art Deco is very geometrical and really has a lot of decoration, but the streamlined modern is the stripping down of that movement to an almost machine-like aesthetic. But you have to consider what was happening at that period. This is when we really start to see the machine age taking off, and things like, remember the big cars with the big front ends and all this new technology that's starting to come in, and all this stuff is, newer, faster, better. And that's what the Art Moderne or streamlined modern buildings are emphasizing. They want to be part of that movement. What you're looking for in these buildings, they have a very horizontal emphasis in their orientation, and you can see that clearly in this building. Rounded edges, you don't see rounded edges in this building, but you see the painted out rounded motifs, which are perfect for the building. The glass block wall, again, right in the front, very obvious. The ribbon band of windows is sometimes there, but metal frame windows, we have the metal frame casement windows here, flat roofs, canopies, smooth stucco wall finishes. Sometimes we see arches, and we don't see that in this building, but it's just a great building. It's just such a classic. Now, when Dr. Anderson, the first Dr. Anderson, built the building, you have to consider what was going on. This is 1939. We're not really completely out of the Depression at this point. The country was still trying to move through that, looking ahead, looking forward, and things like the Golden Gate International Expo were happening, the New York's World's Fair, things that were giving people hope. And Anderson is doing the exact same thing with this building. By building a building at this time in this style, he's saying, my company is strong. I believe in this community, and good times are ahead. See, architecture can just express so much. You just think it's a little building, but when you start looking at everything that's going on, there's a lot more to it a lot of times. So when he was looking at the style, I read some newspaper accounts of this, and he spent over 7 years determining which architectural style he thought would be best for his building. So he was very serious about this. I also read that this was the first building in Healdsburg with a glass block wall. So that was something that was really, really important to note. And it's not only a cutting edge style, but what was happening inside the building was cutting edge. It had an x-ray room, it had a laboratory, it had a children's playroom in there. All of these things were considered really cutting edge for that time. Now, he paid $1,500 for the lot and about $7,500 to build it. I wish I should have converted that in today's time, but money, but boy, that seems cheap to me. But and I love the story of how Dr. Dave and Cathy Anderson didn't even realize they were buying the building when they bought it. They thought they were buying the practice, but they ended up buying half the building, which I think is adorable, and I wish that would happen to me. They worked with an architect in the 70s, and they said, should we take the blocks out? And the architect said, no, don't do that. And thank God they listened, because some people wouldn't have. And because of that, we have this really special building. So, just lucky us that they could have gone in, they could have put something bigger in there. This is a valuable lot. They could have raised it. They could have put more stuff in, but we all are the benefactors of their ongoing preservation and maintenance of this incredible little building. So congratulations to the Andersons, Dr. Dave and Cathy Anderson, and thank you for preserving this wonderful little building. I shouldn't say little, I don't know how many square feet it is, but it's still great, no matter what size it is. You're on, Holly.
Okay. Our next stop is the Anderson Medico-Dental building at 301 East Street. Okay. Well, on behalf of the Healdsburg Museum, I'd like to present this award to you, David and Cathy Anderson, for the Anderson Medico-Dental building at 301 East Street. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll tell you a little about the story of this building. We came here in 1973 to practice medicine, and I signed a paper to practice medicine with Dr. Bill Bruce, who was at 301 East Street. And without realizing it, I agreed to buy half the building, which was a really dumb thing, but in the long run, it's really been a smart thing. And then so he left after a couple of years, so we had to buy him out. And so when we owned the building, we went to local architect Michael Rubenstein and said, look at these glass blocks. Can't we get rid of these glass blocks? And he said, are you kidding me? That's perfect. Perfect for the timing of the era when the building was built in 1939. And then we found out it was built by a dentist named Anderson in 1939. So we named it the Anderson Building. So since then we've owned it, and it's been a good thing.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. And yeah, and Mike Rubenstein also encouraged us to do some of the painting in the typical style from the 30s and 40s. So he was very helpful in that regard.
I just love the story about how they didn't realize they had bought half the building.
Oops, fine.
Okay. She's trying to get rid of me. She wants
No,
to cut
no.
me off already.
Get the hook. No.
You know, I could talk all night about architecture. So the next building that we're going to be presenting award is for adaptive reuse, and that is for the Purity Grocery Store building owned by Eric and Mary Drew. And I tell you, this building is a rabbit hole, and I mean that in a good sense, because I found so much incredible backstory information on this. I could just keep researching it forever, but I was like, okay, I really need to stop. But it was built in 1942 as part of the Purity Grocery Store chain. Now, Purity started in San Francisco in the mid-1920s, and they were throughout Northern California and a lot of Central California. And this is the beginning of what we know as the grocery store today, where you could get everything under one roof, meat and canned goods and vegetables, and everything was priced right up front. And they had numerous checkout stands where you didn't have to wait in line as long. So this is not the first grocery stores that did this, but these are some of the first that did this. So these were kind of considered cutting edge. So now, the form of the building from the 1940s has a really interesting backstory, and I promise this will all make sense at the end. But the Cummings Engine Company from Columbus, Indiana, was formed by Cleese Cummings and W.G. Irwin in 1919. Now, they primarily made yacht engines and farming equipment engines, which was great right up till the Depression. And then nobody's buying yachts, and not very many people are buying farming equipment. So Cumming was trying to think of a way to save the company. And it just so happened that his partner Irwin had a controlling interest in the Purity grocery store chains in California. So Cummings came up with this idea of putting these engines in these trucks to be used to deliver goods throughout the states. And he thought that would be a good way to build up the engine business. And they could put signs all over the truck saying Purity, and it worked crazy good. The trucks with these diesel engines worked great on the California roads, which at the time weren't that good. There was lots of mountain roads. And this really, I didn't realize this, but this was the start of the overland trucking industry in the United States. So this is where it all connects in again. So fast forward a couple of generations, and we have Irwin Miller, who is the great nephew of W.G. Irwin. Now, the family still had an interest in the Purity grocery store. Even though they're back in Indiana, they still have the interest of the stores in California. Well, Miller loved modern architecture. That was his thing. And if you ever have a chance to visit Columbus, Indiana, go there, because they have an amazing collection of modern architecture, especially for such a small town. So in 1940s, Miller hired a young architect out of Chicago named Harry Weiss to design a modern grocery store. Now, I read a very interesting oral interview with Weiss where he talked about working with Miller, and Miller kept having him strip the building down, strip the building down. He wanted something simple yet modern and elegant. He didn't want the customers to think that they were paying for an expensive ornamental building, and that the cost was being passed on to the consumer. But at the same time, he needed a functional grocery store, and he wanted something to entice the consumers in. And that was his goal. And Weiss talks about how Miller just kept pounding him. You've got to bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. So Weiss states that the building was based on a certain form, which he later said, well, maybe it wasn't. He kind of changed his mind. But regardless of what that is, the interior form of the building is vaulted, and this vaulting space was perfectly suited for a grocery store. It didn't waste space. The circulation was simple. This, along with the fact that it was built from concrete, which was easier to work with and not that expensive of material, because you have to think what's happening right then. We were just coming out of the Depression. World War II is starting. And again, Miller didn't want people to think he was spending a lot of monies on these stores, but he wanted something elegant, and that's what Weiss delivered. And the concrete also meant that it was easy to heat and cool. And consider at that time, you have an air-conditioned store, and you got to go grocery shopping in the 1940s. Where are you going? You're going to the store with the air conditioning. And it also, this form also allowed for maximum light into the structure. Now, interestingly enough, in 1955, Weiss designed a whole nother set of these buildings. They were bigger. The arch is not as rounded. They were made of steel. They were made of wood. They had porcelain aluminum panels. And this is really the full development of his arch style. And if you've never heard of Weiss, look him up. He has some incredible buildings. He was really involved in the development of the Washington Metro and some fantastic stuff out there. But anyways, some of these buildings that he designed in 1955 had a pitched roof, and there's a point to that too. So Weiss would eventually design 34 of these approximately 100 Purity grocery stores. So what style is this? Well, it's not always cut and dry when you're looking at a building. Sometimes you clearly go, oh, that's Greek Revival, or that's Queen Anne. Well, we know that's not what this is. We know it's not a post-war style, because the war really hasn't happened. The war is not over yet, so it can't be post-war. So I had an idea of what I thought it was. So I work with 5 other architectural historians. I sent them a picture. I said, what do you guys think this is? And we all came up with the same thing. We think it is another simplified version of an Art Moderne building. And if you look at some of the other examples of these buildings, you can really see that form a little bit more. It appears that some of them had a little more decoration. This one had some incising on it that was very characteristic of that linear movement of the Art Moderne building. It had the columns on the side, again, that were simplified. This arch form, again, it's the stripping down of the Art Deco building. And you can really, if you look for it, you can see it in there. But again, architecture it's just not always cut and dry. And there was some debate, is it Art Deco? Is it Art Moderne? What is it? But we just settled on Art Moderne. But feel free to argue with me on that one. So the exterior design is simple yet elegant in its form and its execution. I lost my train of thought there. Well, the building remained the Purity grocery store until the early 1960s, when the new Purity building was built where the CVS is. And I got to thinking, after looking at Weiss's 1955 examples of Purity grocery store, and those ones with the arched roof. So I went back and looked at some of the historic photos of the CVS building, and I think we have 2 Harry Weiss buildings in Healdsburg. I can't prove the second one yet, but it's pretty awesome because this guy he's a very important architect. So a little more digging needs to be done, but I thought that was, again, a rabbit hole, but still fascinating. So, yeah, I know, isn't that cool? So now when the Drews bought the building, it had been the Barrett's Midtown Center. I'm not sure if that's what it was when they purchased it, but you know, it had been altered quite a bit. And whenever somebody rehabs a building to make it usable for today's needs while maintaining the original elements, as many as possible, it's important on so many levels. Not only is it retaining that sense of place for us, but it's bringing back the history that we have, but it's also good for the environment. If you take down a building, buildings have what they call embodied energy. That's the energy that takes to build the building, to get the products, the cement or the wood or the steel, whatever you're going to have. And as the building gets older, that energy is already gone. But when you take down an old building, not only do you have to spend the energy to take it down, when you rebuild a new building, you have to spend all that more energy. So every time a building gets saved, it's good for the environment, and it's good for us because we get to enjoy it. So I want to say a big thank you to Eric and his wife, Mary, for restoring this building, rehabbing it. It's been great fun to go down the rabbit hole and find out all these cool stuff about it. And I'm not sure I'm quite done on Mr. Weiss. So thank you again, and congratulations.
And now we're headed to the former Purity grocery store at 120 North Street.
This is a building that my wife and I have been involved with for most of our career in one way or the other. We've owned it for nearly 20 years, but before that we've sold it, managed it many times. It was the original home of Purity Grocers, which was a chain of grocery stores, of which this was one of 34 in small towns throughout Northern California. The architect for all of these was Harry Weiss, a Chicago-based architect that ended up, this was in his early career, and his career evolved into similar but much more elaborate buildings, including the Washington, D.C. metro station. This, after Purity moved from a smaller store on the plaza to this building in 1949, and from this building moved to what's now the CVS store. When they moved out of this building, the then owner converted it to retail and offices downstairs and a residence upstairs. For more than a decade, it was Myra and Hoffer's design studios, art studios, and personal residence. In the last decade or so, it has been more of a Airbnb and event space, and it remains as one of the key properties in the heart of downtown Healdsburg.
Excellent.
Well, that actually concludes our presentation for this evening. So I want to thank everybody and say good night. Thank you for attending our virtual annual meeting. And hopefully next year we'll have the potluck that we've always appreciated having. but we look forward to having a wonderful year, and thanks again for coming tonight.